a lot of people, me included, a lot of people live their life very much observer, like a kind of just watching your life happen and reacting to things as they happen. Not enough people are deliberate creators in their existence.
Welcome everybody to Unleash Your Greatness. Today I've got a super awesome guest on, Cory Kastle. And welcome, Cory. I want to welcome you, but first of all, let me tell everybody a little bit about you. So a pro wrestler for over 20 years. He's an actor, a comedian. He's also the co-host of the popular podcast Pro Wrestling as Rassle Rock. Excuse me.
Well, I could see how you could mess that up. I would mess that up too. No.
I always mess something up, so that's just how I am, I guess.
No, it was less about you messing it up and more about you in the general sense, not you specifically.
No, you're good. And so yeah, I just want to. He's also got his own podcast. He's the host of Evolving with Cory Kastle, and so welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Adam, dude. It was cool. Just catching up with you, like a couple. I don't even remember how long ago it was, but it was just like, let's just chat for a minute. And I happened to be like at the gym at the time, and I was like, you know what? It's definitely something I'd like to do. I just want to connect with you because you seemed like somebody who was like on brand with what I'm with. You know what I mean? Like kind of in the same like frequency as me, the same vibe as me, the same idea, like, and even ascend to greatness. It's like in that I see ascend to what your version of greatness is. Maybe redefine what your next level is. Like redefine the success of like what motivates me, what keeps me going, what's the greatness that I'm striving for.
Yeah.
So I'm all about that.
That's awesome. And when we talked, you just had this awesome energy, and it was so fun to talk. And so I'm like, man, we've got to connect. And we have another person that was on another one of my shows, Justin, that we both know. And he's a comedian as well and super fun. And he's like, dude, you've got to get Cory on your show. And I think he even reached out to you and said, hey, I just did Adam's show. You should be on it. And anyways, the
funny part about that was when he reached out to me and said that, I was like, yeah, I talked to Adam on the phone like last week. Like, you're not introducing me to somebody I don't already know who they are. I got my fingers on the pulse, buddy.
Yeah, I know. It's super fun. And I don't think that anything happens by coincidence. I think that we all have these intertwinings of meeting each other and connections, and you're meant to share your story, and like you say, like what inspires you, what motivates you, and that's going to help inspire and motivate other people for sure. And I know it will, because you just have that energy about you. So you have that charisma, and that probably comes from not only your personality, but being on stage and being a wrestler. It takes a lot of charisma to.
I mean, it's like you got to have role models. You got to have somebody who you want to kind of be like. So for me, I just picked the best parts of people who I wanted to be like and was like them, and saw the parts of people that I didn't want to be like, and I wasn't like them. Yeah. So who I am now is just a big melting pot of my inspirations. Cool. And what I learned through my life lessons on.
Sure.
Dude, I say this all the time, and for sure, if anything I say can be applicable to you and you can use this in the future, absolutely use it. I mean, if you give me credit, great. If you don't, whatever. But absolutely use it. I say that the crap. What was I saying? The sometimes we don't know what we really want until what we really want staring us right in our face. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a comedian so bad, but then I found wrestling and I was like, oh, I'm going to just be a wrestler and then give up on my comedy dreams. And then I was like, you know what? I can do both things. And then I didn't know when I was a kid that I wanted to be a podcaster because being a podcaster didn't exist. Podcasts didn't exist. So if you feel aimless right now, maybe what you really are called to do doesn't exist yet. And of course you haven't found it because it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I really like that you have that mindset of, hey, things are evolving, times change. I mean, when we were kids, there was stuff that people were doing that are no longer around.
Right. Yeah.
Things that are not needed anymore. And in the same sense, like you say, there's all these new things that are being created that people can start doing, like podcasting and YouTubing and, all this amazing stuff technology brings
Example for Justin, he was a pro gamer. He played video games for a living. Like, what did you think that was a career that could exist when you were a kid? Absolutely not.
If that was around when I was a kid, I'd probably have gone or tried to gone into that field because I loved playing, Zelda and Mario, and that's probably way before your time. But
no, man. We're probably the same age. How old are you?
I'm 42. So
okay, I'm 37. We're right. Okay, we're right in the same. Yeah. We're right in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
I had those games. I wasn't good at those games. I never was good. I was I played Mario and stuff with my brother and sister, and my sister would play the game and I'd sit by and I'd go, okay, when she dies, it's my turn. And then I play and I die and then I give it right back to her. And then it's her turn. And then when she dies, I get punched. It's somehow my fault.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But I was never good at video games. And I feel like my mindset on that is a little bit of how am I really being productive? Like if I'm playing the same board and losing over and over, I want to go do something that's going to be more fulfilling to me.
Yeah.
So people go, oh, well, you just don't take the time. I'm like, yeah, but that's time that I could be using to do something that I like doing. I don't like losing. I like writing jokes or making people laugh or watching stuff that's funny. Like, I don't know if I want to keep failing the same mission and then being like, man, if I just stayed consistent at failing a bunch of times, like, I just don't want that.
And it really comes down to your passions, right? Like obviously your passion are making people laugh and being happy yourself, obviously, and wrestling and just getting out there and having a good time. I can totally see that in yourself. And when you say like, I don't want to be failing over and over and over again, you look at someone like Thomas Edison, right? He failed over and over and over again, but that was his passion to figure out how to use or make the light bulb, right? And make it better.
And also what were his other options? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like nowadays we got options to do other stuff.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, when was the last time you were bored, Adam?
Not very often. That's for sure. You're right. You're exactly right. There's always
when was the last time you didn't know something and then you didn't look it up? Like you go, oh, what was that? And then you just look it up real quick. Yeah. Sometimes I like to just not know. Sometimes I like to just go, all right, well, I could be wrong. And maybe I am. And I'll learn and be better, but I don't want to rely right away on scratching the itch as soon as I have it.
Yeah.
Like if it's driving me crazy later, I'll look it up. But if I'm wrong, I always say IMDb is like my best friend. Like I watch so many movies, so many TV shows, like everybody, we consume tons of content. And all of what I do on IMDb is I'm always looking up actors. I'm like, oh, what was that actor? And he looks familiar. She looks familiar. And I'll go, oh, now I saw the answer to my question, but instead I'll just sit there and try to figure it out instead. I'm like, why is that familiar? Why is that familiar? Oh, it's really digging at me. It's really, for example, me and my girlfriend over the weekend were watching Vice Principals on HBO, which is a show with like Danny McBride and Walton Goggins. And there's like a very secondary character that's like the son of the main principal. And I was like, who is that guy? Who is that guy? And I was like, he's so familiar. And Carly was like, oh yeah, he's from this. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know what that is. But how would I sit there and go, I know who this guy is? And just kept eating at me. And I was like, I'm not looking it up. I'm just gonna just keep thinking about it. And I was like, all right, bathroom break. I went to the bathroom and I was like, what's that guy? The guy from that show. He was on I'm Dying Up Here. There was a Showtime show about comedians that he was on. And I was like, yeah, I was proud that I didn't have to rely on something else to tell me what the answer was.
And that's a good point, because I think in today's world, with us having so much information at our fingertips, kids like my kids, I don't know if you have kids yourself, but I have 5 daughters.
Yeah, I saw that.
And me and my wife are always like, you guys don't know what it's like when we had to write a report for school. Like, we had to go to the library, we had to sit down with a encyclopedia, or you had to have an encyclopedia at home. Like, when we were kids, like, everybody had an encyclopedia set. Like, you just had to, like, or you'd go to the library, you'd pull it out, you'd do your research, you'd have to handwrite everything out because you couldn't just copy and paste. And like, you
realize like how old you sound when you say that to your kids. Your kids are gonna be like, yeah, we don't care.
Oh yeah, I know.
Like that sounds like what your grandparents said to you when you were a kid.
Right.
Yeah. I think John Mulaney does a bit where he says, he was like, nah, I was on the phone with someone at Blockbuster Video. And then he's like, that's such a dated sentence. Like, it's something like your grandma says. She's like, I used to play jacks down by the soda fountain. Like, no one knows what you're talking about, you idiot.
Yeah, for sure. And when my kids are older, they're excuse me, they're going to say things to their kids that are like, yeah, when I was a kid, we had this cell phone that was the size of a deck of cards or whatever. And they're like, really?
This lends to the other thing I said. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Adam, but
no, you're good.
This lends to my thing. I said, like, you maybe don't know what you want to be because what you want to be isn't a thing yet.
Right.
Maybe you don't know what you really want until what you want finds you, before what you want exists. So, like, don't get so discouraged when you go, I'm so aimless. I'm without drive. I can't find it. I don't know what it is. And it's like, you don't know what it is because maybe what it is doesn't exist. So keep thinking about what it is, the kind of thing you want to exist, and maybe you'll make exist the thing. You know what I mean? Maybe you'll be the person who starts the next thing that is podcast, or the next thing that is a big video game for a living.
Right.
You limit yourself by going, well, since I don't know what it is, I'm just a loser.
Yeah.
Like, once you sort of become a victim to something, you've played that role so much so that an obstacle that you should just be able to get right over is now a block. It's a block, and you don't play any role besides that victim role. I say this all the time, and you can absolutely use this. Please do. I picture a game show wheel, right? So, like, Wheel of Fortune,
right?
And each one of the slots is something that you can blame for your problems, right? So like your brother, your mom, your sister, your dad, whatever. And in all the spaces, there are people's names and stuff that you can blame on stuff. You go, oh we were poor. I'm poor. My job. No one's gonna they didn't let me do it. They did like this limits. And all that stuff is on little name plaques around the thing. But your name is the thinnest one. Like the bankrupt, like on Wheel of Fortune, the little thin bankrupt. If you spin that accountability wheel and it lands on anything but that little thin name of yours, keep on spinning it until it does land on your name, because you are in charge of the way you see your problems and the way you find the solutions.
Yeah, man, I love that actually. And that takes me one back to my youth of watching Wheel of Fortune, but two, you're exactly right. Like, you're the only one who can decide your personality, or not your personality, but your attitude and how you look at your life. And yeah, there's millions of things we could blame on where we're not, because we're not famous because of this, or we're not rich because of that, or my parents were this, or, like you say, there's tons and tons of things that we can blame on everybody else. But when you take responsibility for your own destiny, mm-hmm. and say, I'm going to make what I want out of my life, and no matter what anybody says, and that's true power right there. And, mm-hmm. and the fact of the matter is, even in the face of, war or anything like that, people can take anything away from you. The only thing they can't take away is your ability to choose how you feel and how you're going to respond to things. So, yeah, I absolutely love that.
Were you able to hear that? I just turned it off. My ceiling fan was making some
noise.
Really?
I couldn't hear it, but
you couldn't. Okay, good. Well, I could, and it was driving me nuts. I was like, what the hell is that? Okay.
I'm like, I don't know what's good, but
the ceiling fan was like, how come it's not a ceiling fan of accountability? There's nameplates on the ceiling fan. Keep on spinning.
So I love that the idea of accountability, and it sounds like to me you're almost saying like you need to hold yourself accountable, and I agree 100%, especially for your life. But what do you see as like the main thing besides like blaming everybody? But what holds people back the most from achieving what they want in life?
I think it sounds so cliche, but it really is. You got to take your power back.
Yeah.
And cool. The power that you give to something else when you make it somebody else, like a different force outside of you, like when people go, oh, that's my luck. Well, then you fall in the pattern of blaming a force that's not you. You have the power to change what your luck is if you get in front of that. So I really would say instead of going, well, like, here's who I am and here's what I'm unapologetically me. Well, maybe you should apologize to you for being so stubborn. Like maybe you take back the ability to decide which way your life's going. I always say this, and once again, please apply it to your life if you can. You're a lot of people, me included, a lot of people live their life very much observer, like a kind of just watching your life happen and reacting to things as they happen. Not enough people are deliberate creators in their existence. So it's like, oh, this happened to me, so I had to do this. This happened to me, so I had to do this. And I think a lot of people go, well, the circumstance have lined up so high in my negative that I'll never get to the positive. What it's really like, you have the control in that. You have the power to take that back and go, well, things can work in my favor if I, like I always say in wrestling. So I've been wrestling since I've been wrestling since the Clinton administration. So I
Dating
got in the
yourself
business.
again.
What's that?
You're dating yourself again.
Yeah. That you know what? I used to think that was like when people say dating yourself, I thought that was something about like, I'm lonely, and I have to date myself because nobody else will.
That's funny. That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, I was 14 years old when I got into the wrestling business. So
Wow.
1998 was when I got into the wrestling business, and the the idea I always had was there's so many other people who are better than me that want it more, that it's just limited. And I go, well, he's friends with him, he knows him, he's in his family, he's in her family. That's why they get the spots. That's why they get the opportunities that I don't get. And that's exactly the way it is. If you keep telling yourself that's the way it is. Instead, I go, well, it's about being the right person in the right place at the right time. And instead of being in places that could be the right places, I'll just go, well, I give up. I'm never going to be one of those people in the right place at the right time. So not to say that I don't still feel like could absolutely happen, but a whole bunch of other things that I want just as much, if not more, are happening too. So it's really goes back to like the whole not knowing what you want until what you want finds you. Because what you want is going to find you working on who you are.
Yeah.
Not going to find you going, oh, well, blame. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. I love that actually. And there's a lot to understanding that if you're just blaming everybody, then like you say, the opportunities aren't going to find you. 'Cause for one, nobody's going to want to be around you because you're going to have this negative attitude. Like I'm so picked on. I'm this, you know, poor, woe is me. And you're not going to have a personality or uh, an energy that anybody's going to want to be around you. You're just going to be a downer all the time. And
But
so,
I mean, but if nobody wants to be around you, be somebody you want to be around. That's
yeah,
what like I feel that way about like with my podcast, Evolving with Cory Kastle, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I feel this way about the podcast. I go, I want to make sure my podcast is the kind of podcast I'd want to listen to if I'm listening to podcasts. I
yeah,
want it to be the kind of conversations that I'd want to hear people having. Like I'm more of a fan of so many podcasts before I decided to have my own podcast. I mean, for sure, I was a part of Rassle Rock, also available on Apple Podcasts. If you check out Rassle Rock, Rassle Rock, we've been doing that for like 6 years, and for the first couple years of it, I was like, oh, we only have an hour, and we got to be in and out of the studio, and I was like, oh, I didn't get to really like talk about me. I didn't really get to talk about the jokes that I came up with. I didn't get to make them, and I had opinions about this stuff. I didn't get to share that stuff,
yeah,
and I was like, oh, but I'm also very limited to only talking about wrestling. So I wanted to have something that was more like the shows I already enjoyed listening to, which were WTF with Mark Maron, You Made It Weird, Pete Holmes, Duncan Trussell Family Hour, Joe Rogan Experience,
yeah,
Uncle Joey's Joint. Like those kind of shows were the Church of What's Happening Now with Joey Diaz. So all those types of shows were kind of more of the shows that I kind of wanted to have on my own. And I didn't know that until the opportunity presented itself, because we were paying for studio space uh, in South Jersey, uh, and I had a friend who had a radio show out of an internet radio station that was around here in Fairless Hills and Levittown, Bucks County, Philly suburbs. And I was like, how much does Johnny charge you for studio time? She's like, nothing. And she was like, why, do you want your own show? And really, I just wanted to, I really wanted to kind of see if we could start doing Rassle Rock out of there. But then I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I do want my own show. I do want my own. Yes, absolutely. I want what I want, and I can do that and continue to do Rassle Rock. I'll do both because Rick was doing another podcast too. My partner in the show, he was also doing another podcast that wasn't wrestling related. So it's like, okay, well, we can all find our own grooves and find our things and find what we like, and you know,
Yeah.
kind of like I say to a lot of friends, and I have to say it to myself more often, is accept the compliment. If someone's giving you a compliment, accept it. So that whole thing, like accept your deservingness of what someone's kind of like Aubrey Marcus would say, yeah, in order to serve, you have to be fit to serve.
Right.
So you would be, if somebody hands you a humongous opportunity, are you going to be able to handle the pressures and the stress and the balance of that opportunity, or are you going to just get so flustered in the fact that it's an opportunity and then maybe lose it?
Yeah, for sure. And I there's so many things in there that my mind is just swirling with questions, but or comments. But no, you're exactly right. And the thing that people forget is, one, go after what you want. Like you said, like, I know what you want, or you knew what you wanted. You wanted your own show and you wanted to do it. But two, take compliments. I think a lot of people underestimate, or maybe not underestimate, but they're not willing to accept people's compliments about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's powerful. Like, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's been times in my life where people will say, "Oh, you're good at this," or whatever, and I'll just kind of like roll my eyes, like, "Yeah, whatever," or you're like, "Okay, thanks," and at the same time, I'm shaking my head like, "No," and it's hard to accept some compliments, especially when they're a big compliment, right? Like, "Oh, you're a funny guy." "Oh, thanks," but
because you want to appear humble. You want to appear humble, and if you accept that compliment, you seem like you're not as humble. Maybe you're going to allow those compliments to go to your head if you accept them. If somebody says, "Hey, you're funny," instead of going, "Thanks," maybe in your head you'll go, "I know I'm funny. I know I'm attractive." And you got to go back to like where you came from, because when people compliment me, when people say, "Hey, you're funny," or "You're attractive," I'm like, but for a good portion of my life, I was awkward and nobody wanted to talk to me and nobody cared enough to hear what I had to say. But I made sure that I had a voice that meant something. I had an opinion that meant something. So when people do compliment me on something, I'll go, "All right, just accept that. Just accept that." Because I kind of got in my own way a lot on this whole like accepting compliments, because I know the reality of it is I'm funny or good looking or talented or a good wrestler, or what. I know I'm a good wrestler. That's not the point. But the thing is, it's like, I know the reality of it is none of those things ever got me a living.
Yeah.
I've always had to work Joe jobs and take me right back to being humble. So I have to go answer to a boss. I have to go. This is why it's still hard to accept compliments, because I still work for my friend's dad. As the pandemic started, I started doing HVAC in the summertime. And before that, I was acting for my main income. That was like my job, was paying my bills, was I was acting and stuff.
Cool.
So check me out on IMDb, see the credits.
Yeah.
But
Actually, I have looked you up, actually. So yeah, that's awesome,
man. Appreciate it. But before that, I worked at a call center where I was like sending EpiPens to families. Before that, I was working in a call center for Nikon, doing technical support for cameras. Before that, I was working in a warehouse for 5 years. And before that, I was like landscaping. I was a bowling mechanic. I was a bouncer. I was a bodyguard. I've done so many different jobs where I go like the being funny, the being good looking, the being the positive force hasn't been able to give me the means that I want to live by. But I have to go, as long as I go, well, I'm continuing to pursue the things that will do that. I'm continuing to pursue acting. I'm continuing to pursue comedy. I'm continuing to pursue the podcast. And like, I'm bad at posting pictures on Instagram all the time. Like I just can't. I mean, I challenged myself for December where I was going to I'm going to post every day in December. And I posted like a picture of myself almost every day. I maybe missed 2 days in December, but since January started, I did January 1st, and then I've gone silent. What's today? The 20th something? The 20th.
20th.
Yeah. It's like, I want to make it seem as if somehow this is like maybe my subconscious mind. I don't know, but this is something like if I post about myself too much, I might seem insincere. I might seem like I don't have a humble heart. I don't have a genuine message. And I can't, I want to make sure that I mean what I say when I say it. Or if I overdo hashtags or something, I'll just seem thirsty, like I'll seem like I'm just some thirsty, desperate bitch. And that's not how I want to seem. I want to seem like this is the same thing. Like with my own episodes of my podcast, I'm joking around doing like shameless plugs for Evolving with Cory Kastle, available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But seriously, when I'm doing my podcast, I don't say at the end, like I have to say it, but I go like, I hope this doesn't come off as insincere, but I really, really want you to follow, subscribe. I want you to do all that stuff, but I don't want you to do it if you don't want to do it. Like I get everything I do takes your effort, just a little bit of your effort. And I say, anybody who's listened to an episode of my podcast or listened to me talk on any podcast had to seek out listening to that, had to seek out watching that, had to, it wasn't on the radio. They couldn't just turn the radio on and it was on. They had to take that extra step. So to take that extra step, I've already asked you for so much of your, I call your effort the currency of your effort. So I've already been paid in the currency of your effort so much. And I'm already so grateful for that currency. For me to go and ask for more makes me seem like I'm over asking,
Yeah. And that's interesting point that you bring up, because one, I think that in our society now where we are bombarded so much with so much stuff all the time, and there is so much content out there that we can consume. And if we don't give people a call to action to just say, hey, be sure to like, download, comment, follow this podcast, people will be like, oh, that was cool. And they'll move on to the next thing. But if you ask them, they'll be like, yeah, I did like that. I will follow it. I will. And I see your point. Like, you are asking for a lot, but at the same time, it's like, if you as a creator want to keep creating, then you need to be reinforced for what you are creating is worth putting out into the world. And I think it's just a way of asking to say, hey, if you like this, reinforce that you liked it so that I will feel the need to want to keep creating, right?
I hope it feels valuable enough for you. I have to say it to anybody. I hope it feels valuable enough for you, for me to go, here's messages that worked for me. Here's something that worked for me, and absolutely apply it to you if it works, because for sure it worked for me. So learn from me. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not saying that I got it right every time. I had to screw up so many times before this thing worked for me. But if you can hear these words and apply something from it, that's great. And if it helps your life, makes me so much more happier, makes me more feel like that's my purpose. And it makes me feel like that's my life's work. And if my life's work can help you in some way, is it too much to ask for you to subscribe? Is it too much to ask for you to follow me on social media? That's a crazy thing. That's, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like, and it's like I'm almost devaluing myself.
Yeah.
I'm almost devaluing myself, which is something I would encourage you to not do. Anybody listening, don't devalue yourself. Absolutely value yourself. But no, I have to know that what I'm saying is worth something. I have to know that the messages that I'm putting out there are worth tons, are worth lots more than the 2 seconds that it'll take you to hit subscribe, or the 2 seconds that it'll take you to hit follow, or to like type my name in the correct way. Which that seems like it's too much to ask sometimes, but it's like I have to make sure, I have to like suss out what to take personally and what not to take personally, because for so long I take too many things personally that I shouldn't. Yeah. And I had to learn what serves me, because taking things personally and like becoming a victim to not having enough followers, or not having enough people listen to my podcast, or not having enough feedback. Like I don't just rely on the feedback. What I rely on is that this stuff, these messages, and I say this so much, these messages, these words, this audio, this video, outliving me.
Yeah, for sure.
So I tell the story on my podcast all the time, where in the beginning of me wanting to start my podcast, my mom was telling me the story of when she had burnt a CD where there was voicemails from her best friend and from her mom. And she said, you know how when like people pass away, you kind of forget what their voice sounds like? And I was like, that's not something I'd like. I'd like to have an opportunity to have on the record me telling the people that I care about the things that I actually am passionate about and who I actually am. And you can watch me and listen to me from the age of 33 until I'm not on this planet anymore. And if in 35 years after I'm gone, if this audio still exists and one person gets a great message out of it, I'll feel like my life now is accomplished. You know what I mean? I'll get that's that same me going back to redefining what your next level is. So if I can affect one person 35 years after I've passed, and that makes me feel accomplished. If I can affect one person who is still alive and I can hear some feedback about it, what an accomplishment that would be.
Yeah, for sure. And it's all about leaving that legacy. I think everybody wants to have that ability to leave a legacy behind and say, I made a difference. I touched somebody's life. Whatever it is, but we all want to leave somewhat of a legacy behind. And, you don't have kids, but I have my 5 daughters. And so I watch all the Disney shows and stuff. And there's a show called Coco, and it's all about
the guy that I work with every day keeps telling me to watch, because he's got daughters, and he keeps telling me to watch because I have Disney Plus. I just watched Soul on there, and he's like, now you got to watch Coco, and I was like, all right, I will, and I just haven't yet.
But the premise is, this kid goes down to basically like kind of the spirit world, if you will, and where dead people, relatives have passed on, and they're only there until people who are still alive remember them. And he meets his great grandfather or something like that, and his the last person who remembers um, the great great grandfather is going to pass away, so her memory is fading, and so he's kind of fading as well. But if we can leave that legacy behind, basically, then our memory will always be there. And so to me, that's kind of what I feel like you're saying is leaving that legacy behind, whether it's your voice, it's you know, a work of art like Van Gogh or somebody, and can leave something behind to say, hey, that's beautiful, or I got something out of that, or it touched somebody, and that's powerful, right? So
Well, I mean, I also like the idea of I had a I like having people on the podcast who have a very personal meaning to me, and I want to make sure I say to the people who mean things to me the things that I want to say to them on the record, so that when one of us isn't here, the other one can get something out of that. Like my friend Chris Cotton, he was a pretty successful comedian. We had been friends since like 2008, and he was like on he was on these like late night sets on I forget what it was, ASX, whatever, Live at Gotham. Live at Gotham was the series he was on, and then a year later he was on Comedy Central, and he was like on their daily show. It was called like Every Effing Day or something like that. That was the name of the show that he did. It was like a Facebook exclusive show, and I was like, I want to tell you now, because I know that this is still just the beginning for you. I want to tell you now. I know already, to me, you're a superstar. I love you, and I cherish every moment that we've had together. And you're so funny, and I can't wait till the world finds out. And he passed away in December last year, and it was incredibly helpful to listen back to that, for him to go, you're a superstar to me. I think you're hilarious too. Like all this stuff, you're my brother. I love you. Like all that on the record, to hear him saying that stuff made it feel like, well, if I come across this and I like it, what's it going to mean for, like, if his daughter was born after he died. If his daughter comes across that audio in 30 years and can hear what her dad's really like that, all that is like super important to me. I love the idea of like resources that connect other resources to other things. So
awesome.
I really hope that these messages can be heard by people who will bring the value from them and apply it to their life.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. That's really powerful to know that you're putting something out there that you know that other people who you care about are going to find value in, but not only that, but their posterity hopefully will find value in finding, like, your friend's daughter. Like, that's awesome. I'm sure she's going to listen to that one day and be like, man, my dad was a cool guy and had a lot of friends and was funny, and you put that out there so that she could find that later in life when she's old enough and ready to hear that. So thanks for sharing that little story and experience.
Yeah, awesome. I also had my mom on my podcast. That was cool. A really important episode. We got to talking. I had her telling me the story of like, before I was born, my older sister's 13 months older than me, and she was an emergency C-section. She was like 9 weeks premature.
Wow.
And the childbirth almost killed my mom, and she had like pneumonia, and my sister was really not good. So my mom was telling me that while that was happening, she was struggling with her sexuality, and she was telling me that all on the record. Like, this is stuff I didn't know the specifics of. And she was like telling me about like having feelings for the nurse that was coming and treating for her. And then she was telling me the story of how when she found out she was pregnant with me, she was so scared that she considered having an abortion. And I almost didn't exist. And all on the record. And me on the record being able to tell my mom how grateful I am for the fact that she sacrificed her entire life to make sure myself, my older brother, my older sister, and my younger sister all had all the things that we needed to feel loved and feel seen and heard and appreciated. And she sacrificed everything for that through like giving up who she was. She gave up everything she ever was. She wasn't equipped to be a parent, but she had 3 babies and a dad and a father who had run out on her. So she had to just step up and do it. So I had to make sure on the record, I have to say how important it is that I cherish that. I cherish that, and that made me who I am and gave me some of the work ethic that I have. Because if you can do that and you can make people like us, I can do anything.
Yeah.
It's big inspiration.
Yeah, awesome. That's a fantastic story, and so cool that your mom is willing to open up and share that with you on your show in front of all your listeners and everything. And
Wait, 30 people.
I'm sure it's more than that, but it's cool, and the fact that you were able to say, "Hey, thanks for being a mother that loved me and didn't abort," right? And cared enough to give you a life that at least the best life that she could for you. So that's awesome and very cool. So thanks for sharing that story.
Dude, everybody's got their own like life lessons and stories and struggles, and everybody's is absolutely different than everybody else's. Your problems are unique to you, but you're not the only one who has them. You're not the only one who has problems. So that's where like some empathy for other people can come in. The idea of you wanting better for other people because you want them to want better for you. And that's sort of the way I want to make impressions. I want to make impressions like you genuinely can tell that I care about what you've got going on and want to learn from it. And that's the funny thing, because I'm a guest on your show and not the other way around. Normally I'd be asking you tons of questions about you, but I'm letting you lead this one.
Yeah, no. And I love you telling your perspective of life, and it is so important that we connect with others, and we have that, at least to a level of empathy for other people, because we don't know what they've been through. We don't know what they're going through. You don't know what's going on in their head. We could be a jerk to everybody, but it sounds like you choose, and I believe firmly in the same way, is give people the benefit of the doubt and let them, be cool to them, let them be who they are, and love them where they're at. So that doesn't mean that we can't encourage them or inspire them to want to be better, like we're trying to do. But the
point of us having this conversation today.
Exactly. Yeah. And I believe, the show, my show is called Unleash Your Greatness. And I feel that everybody has that greatness within themselves, just waiting to come out. And we do that by loving them and inspiring them to be better. But that doesn't mean that we can't try to understand what they're going through or what they've been through. So, yeah, it's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I want to ask you a question real quick and kind of circle back almost to the beginning of our conversation.
Okay.
And that is
everything circles all the time. It's cyclical. This life is crazy cyclical.
Absolutely. When you said that you try to take the best parts of the people you look up to, who are some of those people that you look up to, if you don't mind me asking? You're a wrestler, so maybe some of them are wrestlers. I don't know if, you want to say, who they are, but
No, I mean, some of them are people you're not going to know who they are.
sure.
They're people that no one's going to know who they are. But
Yeah.
I'm going to say, like, my trainers, Eddie Valentine and John Dahmer, they taught me what manhood was like. Like, that I didn't have a father figure. I didn't know. Like, these men like took me like putty and turned me into a man. And that was something that I think, some of it came through pain. You know what I mean? Some of it came through them giving me physical whoopings all the time. But it was like, that's part of it. And it was like, I found the role models even in my friends. And I tell this to my best friend, the guy who I co-host Rassle Rock with, one of my co-hosts, Rick Connor. Like, he's only 7 years older than me. And I'm like, you have to know that you've been a role model to me.
Wow.
Like, you have to know that I've looked at you as an example of like the best parts of a person, because the caring nature that you have, the amount of empathy you have for people, and the amount of goodness, the amount of sincere like care for people, I got from him. I got my old tag partner Matt Bomboy. He's like, here's what I know. Here's what I know. People in wrestling need wrestling. A lot of them need it. Like, we need this spotlight. And it's like, that's your entire life, is to live for that one night a month or one night a weekend that you have a show. You live for that. And he's like, but for me, I know that, like, my girlfriend loves me. I have a really nice car. I have a good job. Like, so he taught me gratitude for what you have, like an example of it. Like, I knew that, but seeing him say it and seeing him feel that way was a little bit of an inspiration to me. And seeing then it was able to open me up to seeing the delusions of the people who need it so much, and the ego monster that lives within these I mean, the ego monster lives in me, of course. Like, why else would I be talking into a microphone like 4 or 5 days a week if I didn't have an ego monster in me? But my ego got me where I am, so I have to appreciate it for what it is. That's why I say, like, when I go back to saying how much I appreciated my mom. It's such a weird thing, because when people get hurt, they get just defensive, and they go, well, like, you can't hurt me no more. And that's not the way I would go. I normally, and I actually just had this conversation with my father. I'm so grateful that you left. I'm so grateful that you weren't there, because if you were there, I wouldn't have had the example of how great of a model my mom was for me. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to, because, like, I have to put myself in his shoes on that. I'm gonna go, if you're 24 years old and you're married and have 3 kids, I'm 37 years old. I wouldn't know what to do. I'm ill-equipped. How ill-equipped must have you have been with such little life experience? You were a high school dropout. Like, you're just like, I gotta go. I appreciate you for being that loser. Because if you weren't that loser, you wouldn't have taught me how to be such a winner.
Wow. Yeah.
That makes
powerful.
sense.
Yeah. And I think it really all comes down to perspective, and the perspective we choose to take, right? Like, you could blame your dad, like, I had this horrible time growing up, and you left me and my, mom and the kids, and you were this horrible person. You could blame him for everything, like we talked about, right? Like, blame. But instead you're saying, thanks, because of you, I am the person I am today. Mm-hmm. And, obviously you wanted a dad, right? But
yeah.
but
I mean,
you were able to find other people.
Yeah,
those role models?
honestly, I I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't regret a thing ever in my life. Like I go, well, like I learn more from looking at mistakes I made and being like, that was that, a little less, I was a little less experienced in the world. I was a little less, I, I was, I think some of the biggest mistakes I've made, and I have to like fully own it. And I had to say this to my sister. I had to say this to my best friend. I had to say this to whoever's listening. When I was younger, I I was really insensitive to people who were overweight, and I made jokes, made fat jokes all the time. And I didn't realize that I was making fat jokes about fat people who weren't the fat people in front of me, but that was hurting their feelings too. And
Right.
I didn't think they were fat people. I didn't call them fat, but they thought they were fat. So that was abuse to them. And I had to make amends on that. And I had to apologize for that. And I had to ask for their forgiveness and admit I didn't know. I didn't know that I was hurting your feelings. And as much as I can't take that back, I want to make sure you know that I want to be better. And as much as I want to be better, I want everyone else to think about things they've done and and not beat themselves up for it. And really recognize we can be better if we want to be better. I was saying this thing as a heel wrestler, a bad guy wrestler, and say, you can be a better version of yourself. All you got to do is be more like me.
That's awesome. I love it. Uh, so, oh, I think you're just a wealth of knowledge, and um,
Thanks, man.
we haven't even got into a lot of your story. I might have to have you on if you're willing for a second show.
Oh yeah,
Time.
always, man. I,
Because
okay, so let me go back to saying, since this is on the record, I want to make sure you know that I'm absolutely pleased to be a resource to you in any way that I can possibly be. If it is just a friend to talk to, if it's advice you want to give me, if it's a trick that worked for you, if it's trick that you think that I've got figured out that you want to know, ask me. I'm not unwilling to be a universally at your service. You know what I'm saying?
no, that's awesome. Thank you. That's very very generous of you. I appreciate that. And like I said, like I mean, we're getting into the night, and I know you have other things. I don't want to take your whole night. I could sit here and probably talk to you all night, but uh, and definitely some of your story. You sent me a little kind of bio of yourself, brain surgery, and all that stuff, and we haven't even gotten that. So I'm definitely going to hit you up and say, hey, we need to talk more about your story in the past.
Yeah.
That's happened. This has been so stinking inspiring, though, and I've loved it. And you're so fun. Like I say, you've got a lot of energy and fun charisma. And I want to ask you one last question, just to kind of wrap things up. And I always like to ask this just to kind of get the people who have on my show's perspective. And that is, if there was one to maybe three things that you would say someone needs to unleash their greatness within themselves, what they need to do, what would those things be?
Um, I would say don't doubt yourself. Find what you want. Tell the world what you intend to do, but show them first.
Mm.
So if you come out here and you say, like I say this all the time, if I come out here and I tell you I'm funny and I tell you I'm smart, and then we're talking for 15, 20 minutes and I've never made you laugh once, and I didn't say anything that was that smart, and I just was an idiot, then I'm not only an idiot and unfunny, but I'm also a liar. So be careful how you advertise yourself. Be careful how you identify. As long as you just stay true to who you are and where you came from and where you're going, it's going to give you that check-in moment to check. When I have this like thing I tweeted a long time ago where I said, if my 15-year-old self could see me now, I hope he'd be proud. And I want to just say to my 15-year-old self who's still in me, I love you. You're going to kill this. You're going to do it. Because the people that when I was a kid, I was just such a fan of people like who I am now. So to know that, like, not only did I'm still in the beginning phases of it. Not only have I been in tons of movies and TV shows, but I've had a wrestling career. I have a hot girlfriend. Like I have these podcasts. I have these friends. I have these connections, and I'm still going. Like that is, if my 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old self could see who I grew up into.
Yeah.
And also I got really cool hair, and my body's cool. I got a good body and cool hair. I didn't know that was going to happen. I had a skinny, fat, weird body, and my hair was dumb.
Awesome. Yeah. So cool that you would say that to yourself. And, it's always so much easier to look back at yourself and say, hey, keep going, as opposed to your current self and say, keep going. But I think that's almost just as important, if not more so. But yeah, definitely words of wisdom. That's amazing. So cool. So Cory, I know that people are going to want to connect with you and listen to your podcast. So again, I want to just point out that you are on the Rassle Rock podcast as a co-host with your buddy, your friend.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's more if you're into wrestling, if you're into wrestle talk, like talking about like WWE, AEW, NXT, like the mainstream pro wrestling game, which I take it you're probably not a fan of, but maybe if you are, cool, come listen to that and you can hear me make jokes, because it's more of a funny, like a satire. It's a funny show.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear more about outside of wrestling and you want to join me for my podcast, Evolving with Cory Kastle.
Yeah.
That's more of like, you go back in the archives. If you're into stand-up comedy, I've had some big names in stand-up comedy join me on the show, some sort of well-known names in the music industry. So like scroll through and I actually just said this to somebody today. I said, scroll through and see what names you recognize. If you recognize somebody's name, click it, listen to that episode. If you don't recognize anybody's name, just pick a random episode and listen to it and see if you dig it.
Awesome. Yeah, I for sure am going to check it out. And I want people to be able to find you because you're super funny. You're super fun. And I've certainly enjoyed our conversation. And I definitely am going to hit you up and say, hey, let's do this again, because I want to definitely hear more of your story, your backstory, and pick your brain.
I'm very curious about your backstory and your story and what you got going on. 5 kids, man. How do you do it? How do you do it? Oh,
well,
man.
That's why I'm getting pretty bald on top of my head. But
yeah. I also want to know, like, what's the ins to like the what is it, inspirational speaking, like motivational, like that is, to me, that's all part of the circle that is Cory Kastle. That's all part of the cyclical nature where everything I do wants to serve every other thing I do. So people go, oh, this guy's a comedian. Well, hopefully I have some inspirational things peppered into my set. And then they go, oh, well, we should listen to his podcast. Oh, well, we should check out his wrestling. oh, we should check out his speeches. We should check out, like, it should be all in a circle. I'm doing a circle with my hand, so people who are just listening to it won't know that I'm drawing a circle around the screen. But absolutely, follow my Twitter at Cory Kastle, CoryKastle, and see all my stupid dad jokes and my puns. I do tons of them. If that's what you're into, I'm not a dad, but I got tons of dad jokes. My mom, such a funny person, and she taught me how to be a funny person. So I'll accept that. I'll accept that. I'm not going to come out here and say, "Hey, I'm funny." My tweets are funny though.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. And so, Cory, thank you for your time. I certainly appreciate the discussion and your insights. It's been super fun. I've enjoyed it a lot, and I know the listeners are going to take away a lot of information from you. And yeah, anybody who's listening, go check out Cory Kastle on Twitter, on his podcast, and his podcast. If you're into wrestling, the Rassle Rock Show or Evolving with Cory Kastle, and go check him out. He's awesome. So I've had a lot of fun. Thanks again for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to listening to your episode that you did with Justin. Dude, I listened to your show. I like it. I like what you're doing, and I really feel like our frequencies line up. Yes. So I want to have you as a guest on my show as well. So cool. let's organize that. I don't have the schedule-y thing that you have.
Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out for sure.
But for sure. Now we know each other. I'll give you my phone number. You can call me, text me anytime you have any questions or need any resources or anything. If I can be of help to you in any way, please let me know. Do not hesitate to ask me.
Awesome. Same with me. If you ever need anything from me, feel free to reach out. That's awesome. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. Well, for everybody listening, go out there, live your life, be amazing, and go and unlock the greatness within yourself today. And Cory, thanks again so much. I appreciate it.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Okay. Keep fun, have safe, keep evolving.